Kat, go ahead and proceed with the roll call.
Sorry. Arthur? Oh, sorry. Smith?
Yes.
Thailand?
Present.
Berardi?
Here.
Poinsett?
Here.
Sangri?
Here.
And Chair Shear is absent this evening, and Vice Chair Arthur is absent.
And to the commission members, obviously our chair and vice chair are absent. That means the commission will need to select a presiding officer for this evening. That'd be done by a motion as normal. So a motion and a second would be in order to select someone as a presiding officer.
Make a motion to select as presiding officer Mark Silent.
Second.
Okay, call the roll.
Smith?
Yes.
Thailand?
Abstain.
Berardi?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Sangri?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Mr. Silent, you may proceed as presiding officer.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda for this evening actually is a review of the minutes of our meeting on April the 4th. Did you all have an opportunity to review those minutes? Are there any comments or suggestions or addenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Kat, can you call the roll?
Smith?
Yes.
Thailand?
Yes.
Berardi?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Sangri?
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. That obviously carried. And the next item on our agenda, absent findings to review, is public hearings. So the first is LU 22-0011, a proposal to reconstruct River Grove Elementary School.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. And I believe Ellen Davis is your senior planner for this evening. The hearing procedure will be as follows. This land use request is to be considered based upon the applicable criteria and standards. The staff report lists the criteria and standards identified by staff that were applicable to the request. It was available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. We ask that you specifically identify to the commission the criteria and standards you're addressing so the commission may consider your testimony in relation to those criteria or standards. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you're addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you're testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. The hearing process is as follows. First, there'll be a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimonies by parties opposed to the application, and finally testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following that will be the applicant's rebuttal, up to 5 minutes, and then commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of the proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following commission deliberation. Now, time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of or which are part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed the person is testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they're representing. As stated in the public notice, the deadline for submission of written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to commission tonight. Any person may request an opportunity to present evidence by requesting continuation of the public hearing. A potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known, present, or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It is possible that a future business relationship could arise in the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally or through relatives defined in ORS 244-020. At this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, if you have any bias on the application, if you have a financial conflict of interest, and please declare your business or employment.
My name is Craig Berardi. I'm a consultant project manager with Northwest Pipe. I've driven by it in the last 27 years, quite a bit, but have not visited the site. I have no ex parte contacts, no bias, and no financial conflicts.
My name is Bruce Poinsett. I'm a construction safety consultant, primarily commercial industrial. I have no financial interests, no ex parte contacts. I have driven by the site for many years. That's it.
My name's Mark Silent. I'm a employee of the Intuit Corporation. I've had no ex parte contacts with regard to this situation. I've not made a site visit. I have no bias and no financial conflicts.
My name is Kirk Smith. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Buckhalter. I do real estate and land use. I've not visited the site. I ran a conflicts check based on the parties provided by the city through our conflict system and determined that we have no conflicts with the applicant or any of the advisors to the applicant. I have no other ex parte contacts, bias, or no additional financial conflicts of interest.
And Mr. Sergey? Sangre?
Conflict of interest. I have no ex parte contact with any of the parties. I am familiar with this site. I have not visited it specific to this particular case.
All right, thank you. Is there any challenge to Commissioner's right to consider the application? Hearing none, Planner Davis with a staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ellen Davis. I'm an associate planner for the city of Lake Oswego. The case in front of us is LU 220011. This is the rebuild of River Grove Elementary School. This site is located at 5850 McEwen Road. The site is approximately 9.5 acres in size. McEwen Road is a local road, and the site is zoned PF, or Public Functions. Currently, the site is developed with the existing school building, a number of modular classrooms, outdoor recreation areas, and one surface parking lot for all parking, loading, and unloading for parents, staff, and school buses. There are stands of Douglas fir trees around the perimeter of the site, which are all proposed to remain. The proposed site plan will retain the existing fields in the southern half of the site and tree groves in the northeast, north, and northwest. This is the proposed site plan. The new school building will be 84,000 square feet in size. The school capacity is proposed to increase by 25 students from 575 to 600 students. The proposal would separate parent drop-off and pickup and visitor parking in the upper parking lot. I'm not sure if this will work. In the upper parking lot area, and the school bus loading, unloading, and staff parking will be on the east side of the site. A separate school bus staff parking lot would better allow for school bus queuing on site and increase safety and efficiency by separating parent and school bus loading areas. There are a few accessory structures on this site, including a covered play area and a covered outdoor learning area and another covered outdoor learning area. The north and south elevations are shown here. We do have the main entrance to the school located in the center of the north elevation. There's a classroom wing that's 2 stories in size on the west side of the building. The gym and service yard are located on the east. The service yard is fully screened. On the south elevation, you can again see the 2-story classroom building on the west side of the site. On the east side of the site, you have the covered play area and the gym. The gym, again, is shown on the east elevation, along with the covered play area. You'll note that they do have matching pitches and roof, and that the variety of roof forms, including gable ends, shed roofs, and flat roof, do break up the massing of the proposed structure. The covered play area will complement the main building with similar materials, glulam wood beams, and a similar paint color on the structural supports. The covered structures are going to also complement the main building with similar colors, and they'll include photovoltaic arrays on the roofs. So again, the proposed structure is going to meet all of the dimensional and design standards required of this construction, including, I'm sorry, I take that back. So the main building accessory structures will meet all of the applicable dimensional and design standards, except that a major variance is requested to locate the school more than 30 feet back from McEwen Road. A major variance is requested to locate the school building 74 feet from McEwen Road as opposed to 30 feet from McEwen Road. The major variance can be approved if the request is necessary to prevent unnecessary hardship. In this case, the applicant is requesting to locate the school 74 feet back in order to preserve Douglas fir trees located along McEwen Road while still separating the parent drop-off and pickup area from the school bus loading area, improving circulation at the start and end of the day. So there is, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the site, there is a grove of Douglas fir trees located in this portion of the site. There's an additional large Douglas fir tree that would all be lost if the structure were required to be shifted to be within 30 feet of the roadway. So this is an existing physical characteristic of the site. The grove of Douglas fir trees includes trees 9 to 45 inches diameter at breast height, and tree number 39 is a 45-inch Douglas fir tree. These trees provide screening and contribute to the neighborhood and streetscape since they are street trees. Preservation of these existing trees is outside of the applicant's control. They did not create this hardship. Locating the school more than 30 feet back from the street in order to save these trees along the northern property line is more beneficial to the neighborhood than locating the school within 30 feet of the street. And this request is the minimum variance necessary to accommodate the pickup, drop-off, circulation areas while preserving the trees that exist along McEwen. Staff recommends approval of the major variance. The request to rebuild the school and increase enrollment by 25 students is also a modification of the conditional use permit that exists for the school. The criteria for approval are that the requirements of the zone are met. As discussed in detail in the staff report, all those requirements are met. Special conditions related to schools requiring on-site circulation and safe loading areas are met. I've highlighted on this site plan that the main pedestrian routes and the separation of parent loading areas from the bus loading is expected to improve safety, ingress, and egress to the site. Note that the existing pathway along McEwen will be improved by separating it from the street. Another criteria is that the site is physically capable of accommodating the proposed use. River Grove School has operated at this location for many years, and the site will be able to accommodate 25 more students. One of the ways to minimize impacts on the neighborhood from those 25 students is improving the pickup and drop-off situation by separating parent and bus loading, improving on-site circulation, preventing backups on McEwen. And this image does, it's a little faint in person here, but there are some school buses shown here and have the ability to stack along this bus route and therefore get out of McEwen Road and prevent any backups for parent cars as well. And the last criteria for the conditional use permit is the functional characteristics of the school can be made reasonably compatible with uses in the vicinity. The general school building location and location of outdoor recreation areas are going to stay in similar locations. There is additional landscaping proposed along the east and west sides of the site in order to screen the new kindergarten play area, which is marked in green on the west side of the site. There is an existing forest with additional native plantings proposed in the purple area. On the east side of the site, there's going to be screening along that entire site to provide additional screening, landscape buffering from the bus parking and loading area from the residences located to the east. And also the applicant has submitted a photometric plan showing that new outdoor lighting will meet the city's performance lighting standard, limiting any spillover off-site. The applicant's transportation evaluation estimates an increase of 57 daily car trips to the site. McEwen Road currently carries about 1,000 trips per day, so the estimated increase is about 0.5%. It's considered de minimis and no expected impact on nearby uses is expected. So staff finds that the standards for the conditional use permit modification are met. And last but not least, tree removal. So we did receive a number of comments related specifically to tree 139, so I'm going to focus on tree 139. All of the other trees proposed for removal are smaller stature trees, including a Japanese maple, some ornamental cherries and ornamental plum trees, and sweet gums. There's only one Douglas fir tree that's proposed for removal, and that is tree 139. This is a 44-inch Douglas fir. It's located well within the buildable envelope for the site and within the footprint of the new building. Staff finds that tree 139 is not a significant tree as defined in Chapter 55 because even though it is larger than 15 inches, it is in fair health and it is not an invasive tree species, it is not significant to the neighborhood due to size, species, or distinctive character, which is the requirement to be considered a significant tree in Chapter 55, the Tree Code of Lake Oswego. There are many other Douglas fir trees that are similar size or even larger on the site. There's even a 58-inch Douglas fir tree on this site that is proposed to be retained. So this tree in particular is not significant due to its size or species. The Commission has found in the past that a tree provides distinctive character to a neighborhood when it is in a prominent location or a uniquely visible location, like a street corner. In this case, tree 139 is approximately 265 feet from McEwen Road. There are other Douglas fir trees to remain along McEwen Road, as we discussed earlier, and another larger Douglas fir tree located at the front of the existing school building. Tree 139, again, is located towards the center of the site, not at a prominent street corner in a prominent location. All of the other trees around the site that are the large Douglas fir trees, we can see in this pictometry image, an above view from 2018, going to remain. So this tree, given its location towards the center of the site, is not in a prominent street corner, so it is not considered a significant tree. The removal of this tree will not alter the neighborhood skyline, which is maintained by the other Douglas fir trees remaining on site. It's located about 165 feet from the east property line, so it does not act as a screen for the residential homes to the east. And the tree is not part of a grove of trees, so it would not constitute removal of 50% or more of a grove of trees. It's also not a street tree. So according to our Chapter 55, Section 2, Subsection 80, tree 139 is not a significant tree. The applicant does not need to address alternatives for its removal. However, the applicant did look at alternatives, including alternative site plans during the site planning phase, demonstrated in Exhibit F7, and responded to specific alternatives brought up in public comments within the last 10 days in Exhibit F12. Shifting the building footprint to the west would require removal of at least 4 other additional trees, including a 48-inch Douglas fir tree and a 34-inch giant sequoia, which wouldn't be, shifting the structure to the west also wouldn't work because the height would be exceeded, the dimensional standards would no longer be met. As a structure within the PF zone is closer to property lines, the maximum allowed height decreases. So the structure is already designed to be the maximum height it can be at the location it is. It can't shift any closer to to the west property line. Shifting the building footprint to the north would require removal of a larger 48-inch Douglas fir tree located closer to McEwen Road and may jeopardize the grove of fir trees that we discussed saving through the major variance. Shifting the tree to the south would require shifting the tree about 130 feet or more to the south, which would lose use of all of the athletic fields that are existing. And again, this tree is not significant, and alternatives to its removal are not required by the tree code. I'll note that there are 17 mitigation trees required, including 1 native species, but the applicant is proposing 74 mitigation trees, including 33 native trees. Staff finds that all of the criteria are met and recommend approval with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report. Do we have any questions?
Are there any questions for staff?
No.
In that event, I guess the next on the agenda would be testimony
First?
by the applicant first.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lake Oswego School District, I suppose I should say my name. My name is Tony Vandenberg, Executive Director of Project Management, Lake Oswego School District. Joining me tonight.
Rebecca Stuker, Principal and Architect at IBI Group.
And can you direct your microphone just a little closer to your mouth, just for the recording purposes?
Sure, is that better? We would like to thank you tonight for hearing Land Use Case 22-0011, River Grove Elementary School. We'd like to thank staff for their thorough preparation of the report, and we'd like to thank the community for their input during the design process. Also joining me tonight are members from our entire design team. All of the disciplines within our design team are represented tonight if there are any technical questions related to the project, as well as our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Shealy, Dr. Draper, our principal at River Grove, other members of staff, my project management staff. Can you go to the next slide, please? I'd like to talk a little bit about some of our stakeholder inputs. So this process started quite a while ago. We are pretty far along in our design process, and we've met with hundreds of individuals, staff, students, parents, community, district thought leaders, and a design advisory team, focus groups with program experts, safety consultants, partners in Lake Oswego school districts, as well as members of the community, such as the Sustainability Network and others. Our design has incorporated the vision of our stakeholders, creating a responsive and responsible design. We've worked together to minimize the impact of the site, largely retaining the existing footprint of the building and creating a highly sustainable and resilient design. We've worked to retain and enhance the natural features of the site. The design will serve students in the community and will be able to respond to ever-evolving educational programs. Some of the things we wanted to share with you are some of the big ideas that came out of our early design process. Some of our students, staff chimed in about they didn't want long hallways, they wanted access to the outdoors. The library should feel connected, but also a quiet place for refuge. Innovation lab should be front and center of the building, showing our commitment to STEM. We also wanted a multi-purpose commons, serves as a place for community to gather as well as a cafeteria, which is not very typical of our elementary schools. Next slide, please. Conversations with students occurred throughout the process. A lot of the students wanted more light, wanted us to plant some trees, bright open spaces, places to feel comfortable in their classrooms. Notice the student, nice and comfortable, reclined in his sofa there. We asked the students to draw some pictures with trees. We tried to retain the trees, and you'll see that the educational wing is nestled around the West Grove trees. We've taken advantage of that area by creating outdoor learning spaces. Next, please. I want to talk a little bit about where we are in the process. So right now, we are about 60% complete with our final phase of design. We're very close to completing our design. We are in land use now with the hope for approval tonight. We are already in process for our early site work permits, and we've retained several of our contracts to begin the relocation and removal of structures. We're pre-qualifying general contractors, and we're planning to begin work on site in mid-June, immediately after school releases, bidding the larger building in early fall of '22. So before we get into design update, we've prepared some slides. We wanted to go into a little bit more about how the design evolved and where we landed and how we landed on our current design footprint. We received a lot of feedback from the neighborhood association that we've been working with. We believe that we've responded thoroughly. On Friday, we received another request for a potential alteration to the existing design. We'd like to speak to that as well as we get into the design update. One thing that I did want to bring up, as we are on a track with schedule, continuance of our hearing, appeal of our hearing will cause significant delays, resulting in significant cost to the project.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit about those conversations that Mr. Vandenberg had mentioned, the solutions, the design solutions that we came to and why. So to start off, thinking about the site, some of our design priorities have already been mentioned this evening. The playfields were recognized immediately as an amenity to the school community and the neighborhood. So that was an obvious thing that we knew we needed to maintain. Second, that has been mentioned also, are the large established trees on the site. Not just maintaining those trees, but also celebrating those trees and giving the students an opportunity to really inhabit and enjoy the site that they're in. The current River Grove building or series of buildings doesn't really take advantage of this natural beauty with the views that we plan for the proposed design, one of which being that large learning courtyard to the west. And as was mentioned earlier, we are keeping 63 out of the 64 large established native and healthy trees. 82 out of the 85 large established trees are being retained irrespective of condition. Many trees planted, approximately 43,000 square feet of shrubs, 39,000 square feet of invasives being removed. Separating parent and bus, I won't go into too much detail here. I think it was fairly well covered already, but the parent and bus drop-off and loading zones, not just separating those two, but also ensuring that our clear lines of sight for students going from the school, loading onto the buses with the covered play, and then coming off of buses and going into what you'll see as the commons in the center of the building. Clear lines of sight at the front of the school as well, those purple dashes indicating an overhang and a covered space. Learning gardens are now standard for elementary schools, a new standard that the district has embraced, and so we are proposing a learning garden, obviously facing south, so those plants will thrive. and that is where one of those accessory structures is located. Variety of outdoor movement and play opportunities is also was a necessary component and one of the large priorities that came up in our design conversations. Not just play, but also gatherings, socializing, health and wellness opportunities outside, and an opportunity to separate the younger students from the older students, and actually having an accessible playground in both places. Safety and security, as I mentioned, lines of sight are really critical to school design. It's something that we talk about quite a bit on the interior and exterior of a building. So being able to see and supervise students fully during recess, also during those pickup and drop-off times. A little bit of a closer look in at the interior of the building. So you can see as you come in at the north, that main entrance there. And as you walk through the main entrance, you'll actually be able to see past the stair and through a large glass wall all the way to the garden beyond. And if you turn to the right after you walk in, to the west, I should say, you'd also be able to see the large grove of trees there on the west through the Innovation Lab. So looking through a series of interior and exterior glass walls through the Innovation Lab and to that grove of trees and the learning garden. The two classroom wings we refer to as classroom neighborhoods, and they are two-story, and those two-story wings embrace the grove and are facing the grove there, as well as the learning courtyard between them. On the other side of the building, you'll see there is a commons, which again is somewhat new for elementary schools in this district. And it's not just a place for dining, but also community gathering and celebrating the performing arts. The gym adjacent to the commons, and of course our service yard in the northeast corner. Some of the design priorities that we heard over and over again within the interior and exterior of the school is that we wanted to be a community of connected learners. The current River Grove building is a series of 8 separate buildings. It's a campus. Students walk outside under cover, kind of the California style of school design, which was common for that era in Oregon. And we heard from students and staff over and over, they feel disconnected. They find it difficult to collaborate as professionals, and students don't feel connected as a community, and they wanted a place where all students could connect. They wanted to connect through a courtyard. Courtyards kept coming up over and over in our early design iterations, and having one place where everyone can gather. And also on the interior of the building, during our design tours, we saw a few schools, elementary schools in the region that had large operable walls that opened up between the commons and the gym so that there could be large community gatherings there as well, which is something that's incorporated into this design. Efficient and safe access for service vehicles was another driving force in this design. We knew that currently the service vehicles come through the main parking lot. It's the only access point through the main parking lot where visitors and staff park, and we knew that it would be important to shift all of that access to away from the parent and visitor loading and parking zones. Those kitchen deliveries can happen at all times of the day, several times a day sometimes. Deliveries for the garden, and as well as obviously trash, recycling, all of those access points. It was important for us to shift all of those over to the east side of the parking area where we knew staff and buses would be. Accessibility was a driving factor in this design. There are some areas in the current River Grove School where there are sidewalks connecting places and there are steps in the sidewalks. There is a slight slope to the site from north to south, the low point being the south end of the site. And so in this overlay of the contours, you can see the red contour topographic lines there being the existing contours and the blue being the proposed. There are some that overlap there. The West Grove, most noticeably, we're not doing anything to those contours, of course. We're not going to be disturbing the grades on that tree, those trees. But we are flattening out the site right where the building is going to sit. So the level 1 is a flat level, and that the southern area of the site where we have learning, play, gathering opportunities are fully accessible from one side to the other, top to bottom.
We are building a very efficient and very resilient building. So as we learned from Lake Ridge Middle School, our most recent new construction, the school will take on a similar approach. This building will be what is considered path to net zero, fully electric building. We will not be relying on fossil fuel whatsoever. We're at least 70% below baseline energy consumption levels, which will help us get it to that path to net zero. We're also installing solar arrays. We have opportunities for a microgrid with battery backup. We have redundant systems included with our emergency generator that will allow for emergency systems to be operational, further allowing this building to be used as a place of refuge following a major event, including a major seismic event. The building will be designed to seismic level 4, allowing for that immediate occupancy. We've worked with partners in the city of Lake Oswego, city of River Grove, and we're excited to hear about emergency response as we move forward with plans to respond to these potential disasters. Give a little bit of insight into what we might experience on the site. You saw one of these renderings. We've got a few more. Our learning courtyard in the back. Some of the trees that are actually there that we kind of blurred out. The south side of the building, our learning garden, and some of our gathering spaces. A view from Pilkington and our fields to the south. A couple of considerations around tree 139. We've already heard a couple of these, and we've responded to a number of concerns raised from the neighborhood in 2 memos that were entered into the record. Another consideration came in we'd like to talk about.
Okay, this was the 3rd design iteration that we received this weekend from the community, and the idea here is that the gym could be rotated 90 degrees and the covered play moved south. So a response to this is not included in the packet that you have, so we've included it here in the presentation. Some of the things to note with this design change would that it would still require that the building shift to the west, impacting the Western Grove. The large area that we have for outdoor play would be reduced. Clear lines of sight that we talked about earlier, especially that bus loading and unloading area, those clear lines of sight would be blocked with the rotation of the gym, the large mass of the gym. We do need to maintain emergency access between the covered play and the gym, the actual school building. So this covered play would actually need to move further south than what is shown here. There are some support spaces at the gym that would need to be reshuffled. And of course, those grading challenges. Tree 139 is located at a much lower level, grade above sea level than we are proposing to grade that area of the site in the hopes of having a fully accessible playground.
We'd like to thank the Commission again for considering our project. Again, we believe that we've been thorough in our plans, very thoughtful in the layout of the building and responsive to concerns and comments we've received along the way. Thank you.
So at this time, is anyone present who would like to?
But before you move to
Oh,
that,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, if the commission members have any questions for the applicant, this would be the time to ask that, because their next opportunity would be rebuttal.
There we go. Yeah, actually, this is a simple one. There's a lot of angst over tree 139. Simple solution might be take some part of tree 139 and some volunteers of parents or whether, and make a bench out of it. Tree 139, okay? I don't think there's a lot we could do with it, but that's something to think about.
We appreciate you bringing that up. It is something that we have considered. We are prepared to have additional conversations on how we can celebrate the tree. We have some ideas already of how we can incorporate it into our learning courtyard, as well as other areas along within the site.
Yeah. And is it just heating? Does the school have cooling capabilities? And I bring that up only
There are
pandemics come in, kids might have to catch up in the summer. Is that?
Yep, we have enhanced mechanical systems. It's a very highly sustainable building, so we have direct outside air supply with our mechanical systems. There is some cooling within the building.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just remind the commission members and in the audience, the question is whether or not the application complies with the criteria.
Right.
And it's not the commission's job to run the building, okay? Usually when we look at the standards, it's how does the building and its use impact surrounding properties on it? What is its land use impacts? So just ask the commission members to remember that when they're asking their questions.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a list, Kat, for? Thank you.
Opposition?
Okay, so first, we would like to hear from those present who would like to testify in support. On our list is Courtney Clements. If you could state your name and address, and I believe you have 5 minutes. Is that correct?
I won't need that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Courtney Clements, 5560 Kilchurn Avenue, Lake Oswego. I'm an LO mom. Thank you so much for the opportunity of addressing you this evening. I did submit a letter in support of this project, which I wrote from the perspective of the chair of the 2021 bond campaign, position I had the pleasure of serving. And want to remind you the bond did pass by 57% of the vote, so we do have community support for this project. I'd like to expand briefly upon those comments this evening from the perspective of a parent and active member of the Lake Oswego Sustainability Network who has worked on sustainability issues in this district for over a decade. River Grove Elementary as it stands now is woefully inadequate as an education space and has the potential for being a much more resilient, effective, and efficient structure set in a landscape which will be educationally functional, aesthetically pleasing, and environmentally responsible. The new school, as Mr. Vandenberg and his team have envisioned it, is much more thoughtfully designed and will be much better built, serving River Grove students and neighbors as a model educational space, both indoors and outdoors, for decades to come. I had the privilege of participating in the long-range planning, bond development, and design process that has resulted in the construction of the new Lake Ridge Middle School. So I can speak very confidently that this district and its facilities team are committed to mindful and sustainable design, and they will build a wonderful building in a wonderful space. The new River Grove will be an asset to our community, just as Lake Ridge Middle School is. And so I encourage you to approve the design this evening, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who would like to testify in support of the proposition? If not, next we'll move on to those opposed. I have two folks. Peter Claby. Peter, are you present?
There you go.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Peter Claby. I'm the chair of the Rosewood Neighbourhood Association. I just want to ask a question, procedural question. Do all the commissioners read the comments that get submitted prior to the hearings? Just because
The entire record is made available to the commission members, at least by Friday prior to the hearing.
okay, I just noticed that there was something like 20 comments that were posted to the city's website today, and I just want to make sure that the commissioners are aware of a lot of the comments. Some of them are repetitive, but I think they were expressing some of the views of some of the neighbourhood. And
We get the comments are due by noon, and we give them to the commissioners shortly after that. So they would have had all of afternoon to receive it, or to review any comments that were received kind of late today. Anything that was received before Friday, they got on Friday.
okay, thank you. And then I just kind of Tony's comment earlier about delays in approval or a continuance of the hearing affecting, I thought that was a little off-putting to kind of imply to you guys that you need to make a decision fast and you should make the decision tonight. I fully expect you will make the decision tonight, but I just thought it was kind of an strange comment from Mr. Vandenberg. I have to get my glasses out. We think that the Lake Oswego School District has created a good school building plan that provides for energy efficiency, input from students and teachers as to the way the rooms will be used, adopting best practices with learning classrooms, L-shapes, windows-facing geometry, spaces to be creative and collaborative, and a new cafeteria and a commons area. Tony Vandenberg and his team have taken feedback from neighbours and parents at 3 neighbourhood meetings and incorporated it into their plans, including allowing hawthorn bushes to remain on the eastern property edge to provide privacy for neighbours, and changing lighting to be limited to 3,000 Kelvin to be sensitive to neighbours. So we really appreciate the work that the school district has put into this application. Yet we are recommending that DRC approve the annual use application with one major additional condition. We want to see that the building footprint be moved to protect tree number 139, as you've already heard, which we consider to be a significant tree per 55.02.030. Tree number 139 is the 8th largest tree out of 148 surveyed on the property. It's rated healthier than 4 of the trees larger than it, so that additional consideration should have been given to protecting this tree. It's standalone, visible from the road, and in a prominent location, as Ellen Davis's slide earlier showed you. You could see the tree standing out in the middle of the school property, quite distinct from every other tree around the property borders. Students are aware of the wildlife living in the tree. The school district alternative site analysis only considered a rectangular building footprint when deciding which trees should be protected. This building is not a rectangle. So per LOC 55.02.080.3b, we think that a proper site alternative analysis should have been conducted using the planned building footprint that they had planned to use. We proposed 3 alternatives to the school district and are pleased to see that they've responded to all of the 3 alternatives. And I won't repeat the 3 alternatives, but they're in Tony Vandenberg kind of went through them already. Part of our concern is that the school is being built to house up to 600 students, yet only 360 students are anticipated to attend the school when it reopens. This is a 50% overbuild on what is needed. Tony Vandenberg and Dr. Jen Shealy, the superintendent, both told us that in the case of Lakeridge Junior High capacity, there's 1,100, yet they only have some 850 students there, but are utilising all the spaces. With River Grove at 360 students, there is only a need for 16 classrooms, not 24. The school district could easily have reduced the number of classrooms to 20 to support 500 students and still have capacity to spare. This would give the school district an additional option on how to lay out the building footprint. we don't think that any real determined effort was made by the school district to protect tree number 139. They've come up with a lot of reasons why it can't, but it's not like they designed to try and protect this tree by considering the building footprint in their site analysis. And when we were first notified about this application back in December, they had the pre-application hearing, we were not made aware of any consideration being given to what trees were going to be protected and what trees were not going to be protected at that time. They just hadn't done that diligence in the work at that point in time. I've got a couple of slides I wanted to point out to you here. This tree here was a ponderosa pine that was part of the Lake Ridge Junior High property, and it was directly opposite the fire station on Jean Road, and we didn't pick it up at the time, but it was actually slated to be removed as part of the rebuild of Lake Ridge Junior High. And if you could select to, I can click to the next slide. So that's what happened in April of last year. It was cut down, and that's what it looks like now. So we were kind of curious because it doesn't look like there was any genuine attempt to protect that tree, and all it's done is provide for a brand new swale to be put in the place of where it used to exist. Tony Vandenberg did indicate to us only 9 days ago that the design was 60% complete, so we don't think it's too late to accommodate this design change request. We think this one detraction from the school district plans changes this from being an A-grade project to a B-grade project. We all want the best for our schools, as not only do our students benefit, the school district is the leading reason why families with school-aged children move to Lake Oswego. We'd like you to help make this an A-grade building project, and we ask you to do an additional condition on the approval of the building permit. Thank you.
Thank you.
I assume no questions.
Next is Rose Wood. Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was a person. And then we'll move on to neither for nor against. I have Colleen, and I don't have a last name for Colleen. Is Colleen here? No? How about Donald Conklin? Oh, I'm sorry. Colleen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening. As a neighbor in
You'd
the
like to
area.
state your name and address.
Can
for the
you tell
record?
us your
Yeah.
full name and your address, please?
Yes. My name is Colleen Allen Schublin, and my address is 5775 Southwest McEwen Road.
Thank you.
And I just had a couple questions because on some of the changes, it talked about sidewalks, and I didn't know if they were planning on putting sidewalks on both the north and the south on the full length of McEwen. And then the other part was if they were going to be putting sidewalks, our own property, the elevation drops down as it goes down the hill. So they would have to put in some sort of retaining wall in that area. And we have three old Douglas fir trees on our property, and I was curious on how that might affect the root integrity of those trees.
This is the time for testimony, and perhaps the applicant would wish to respond to that in the rebuttal section.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And Donald Conklin? Mr. Conklin, can you hear us?
No, you said stay. You wanted to join.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Conklin, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Welcome. Can you Please state your name and your address.
Yeah, my name is Donald Conklin. I live at 4575 Upper Drive, Lake Oswego, and I'm interested in the following issue, LU 22-0003, regarding the buildings on Boone's Ferry. So I wasn't intending to testify for the River Grove Elementary School.
All right, we'll get back to you on that.
We will get back to you, Mr. Conklin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? If not, we'll turn this over to Attorney Boone.
Well, at this point, since there is neither for nor against, the time would be for rebuttal by the applicant, up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. We appreciate the comments. However, I do not agree with the comments from Mr. Klaby. We believe that we've put in a significant amount of effort and created a thoughtful design with significant input from community, staff, and others. We've looked at alternative designs. We've provided a site plan that strives to retain as much of the natural features on the site as possible, as well as providing significant enhancements to the site. As for the question of a sidewalk on McEwen, as part of a separate conversation we're having with the city of Lake Oswego, as well as the neighborhood and neighbors affected, we are looking at additional enhancements that would be handled in a separate public works permit, yet to be fully designed or permitted. More to come on that.
The commission have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I entered my
Okay, one moment, please. All right. Prior to closing a public hearing, prior to closing the public hearing, any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. If a request is made, the public hearing will either be continued to a date certain, not less than 7 days later, or the record shall remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing to enable additional written evidence or testimony to be submitted, and the commission will establish the period for any rebuttal written evidence to be submitted. Is there any such request for continuation of the hearing?
The two were missing.
I'm going to say, is there any request for continuance of the hearing? Okay. Unless waived by the applicant, the commission will allow the applicant at least 7 days after the record is closed to all other parties to submit final written argument in support of the application. That information will be considered part of the record but would not include any new evidence. So I ask the applicant, do you wish to submit final written argument, which would delay the commission's deliberation until the next meeting? Or do you wish the commission to deliberate and decide the case based upon the evidence and argument that's been received?
Please proceed.
Okay. With that, Mr. Presiding Officer, you may proceed with deliberation.
The public hearing is now closed and the DRC will begin its deliberations. No public comment is permitted. Mr. Smith.
So I used to be district council for a large school district in our neighbor to the south, and I am really impressed by what this school district has done with this site. And the reason I say that is when I was district council and was building schools, I only had one objective, and that objective was the student safety. That was number one for me. So I really like the idea that the parent drop-off area is separated from the bus area. And I'm also, I think it's amazing the way that the district has set this up almost like a learning center for not only the children, but also for the community, with also you kept hearing it in the applicant's analysis is, safety, sight lines, keeping the buses away from the children, but then also having to deal with a few other issues. And I think they've taken a difficult project, because it is really difficult to build a school because of basically from my perspective, you have so many limitations, and also, but you have the number one overriding objective of teaching children and making them safe. And I think the district, from my perspective, has done an amazing job in designing the school, taking the comments from the community, but also realizing that, you don't want to lose a feature of the school because of, from my perspective, one issue. Even though it's an important issue, I think that it has to be a cohesive, learning area, and I think they've done an amazing job for that. So I support approval of this project as submitted.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I think one, as our Attorney Boone pointed out, our focus is city code, ensuring that. And from that standpoint, the city's done a good job on the project, and that's our main criteria of what we look at. The tree, certainly we're all concerned anytime we cut down a big tree. But there have been a lot of projects in this city over the last several years I've seen, and that there's only one, and every one counts, is pretty impressive that they've kept it to a minimum. So I'm in favor of the project. I'm not going to repeat what our commissioner said, but all good points. I'm very much in favor.
Thank you. Bruce?
Comments are very short. I am very interested in the elimination of conflict between people and vehicles. When design addresses that, I'm fully in favor of it.
And Kat, can we hear from our colleague via Zoom? Commissioner, do you have any comments? Can you unmute?
We're going to try it again, the time delay. I am very much in favor of this project in the way that the design professionals and the community who have planned it. I would make one comment as a board member of the Oswego Lake Watershed Council, where trees and the preservation of trees in Lake Oswego is a #1 priority. I think this team has done a marvelous job to reduce the impact on trees. I'm sorry to see tree number 139 go, but I'm amazed they have been able to minimize the impact of on trees the way they have done it. So I'm very much in favor of this project.
Thank you. And as for me, over the past 5 or 6 days, as I've reviewed all of this, I was brought back to my grammar school, which was in the great state of California, I might add. And I became increasingly jealous of the kind of experience that I could have had at this school in the near future. Mine was very much the California model of school, so I appreciate that. And at this point, unless there are other comments from the commissioners, I'd ask if are there any motions that we need to entertain?
I move that the commission approve this project as submitted with no modifications.
Second.
Kat, can you please call the roll?
Smith,
Yes.
Dylan,
Yes.
Berardi,
Yes.
Poinsett,
Yes.
Sangri,
yes,
The motion then passes 5-0.
All right, this is a tentative decision by the commission and written findings we brought back to the commission at its next meeting on June the 1st, which is a Wednesday due to Memorial Day holiday. And I'm looking
No,
at
it's the 6th.
the 6th, all right?
June 6th.
June 6th, all right, and 7 o'clock?
It's 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Is that a Wednesday?
Oh, no,
That's a Monday.
I'm sorry. Yes, 2 weeks is.
Got it.
But that's the fifth Monday, so that doesn't count. So we're back to the 6th. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you. And the next item on our agenda would then be LU 220003, a request for 3 mixed-use buildings. And I believe that the city staff, where's my agenda? I apologize.
Okay.
Evan.
Yes.
There's Evan. Thank you, Evan.
And just for the record, while he's coming up, this is a request for approval of a minor development review permit for 3 mixed-use office and residential buildings located at 16494, 16524, 16552, and 16556 Boones Ferry Road. The hearing procedure is the same as previously, but unfortunately I have to read it into the record. This land use request is to be considered based upon the applicable criteria and standards. The staff report lists the criteria that staff identified as applicable to the request. It was available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. Please specifically identify to the commission the criteria standards you're addressing so the commission may consider your testimony in relation to the criteria standards. If you're not identifying the criteria standards you're addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you're testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damage in circuit court. Public hearing process as follows: be a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant of 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or the agencies or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed with 10 minutes. Following that will be the applicant's rebuttal up to 5 minutes, and then commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following commission deliberation. Those time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of which are part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It's assuming the person is testifying on behalf of their own, testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they're representing. The deadline for submission of written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to the commission tonight. Any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence by requesting a continuation of the public hearing. A potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It is possible that a future business relationship could arise the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally or through relatives defined in ORS 244-20. So I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, if you have any bias on the application, if you have any financial conflicts of interest, and please state your business or employment. Commissioner Berardi.
Hi, my name is Craig Berardi.
Your microphone.
Hi, my name is Craig Berardi. I am a consultant project manager with Northwest Pipe. Not visited the site. I've driven through it thousands of times over many years. No ex parte contacts, no bias, and no financial conflicts of interest.
Hey, my name is Bruce Poinsett, firm GEW. We are construction safety consultants, have had no contact, no ex parte contact, no employment, no interest in the site. I've driven by it like several other people, and that's it.
My name is Mark Silent. I'm in the employ of the Intuit Corporation. I've not had a site visit, had no ex parte contacts. I have no bias and no financial conflicts of interest.
Hello, my name is Kirk Smith. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Buckhalter. The city submitted a list of parties and their consultants that I ran through our conflict systems, and our conflict system determined that I have no conflicts with the applicant nor with any other consultants. I have not visited the site. I don't have any ex parte contacts, no bias, and no additional financial conflicts of interest.
I'm Dwight Sangre. I'm a retired engineer and a consulting engineer. I have no financial or other relationship to this project. I have no bias. I have had no contact with any of the parties involved in this.
Okay, thank you. Is there any challenge to a commissioner's right to consider the application? Hearing none, Senior Planner Franstead with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Boone and members of the commission. Before I begin my presentation, I need to enter into the record we received 2 testimonies since the publication of the staff report on May 28th. That's Exhibit G200 from Donald Conklin and G201 from Mrs. Conklin. I addressed those in my staff memo dated today. And I think I'll generally go over that as part of my presentation. Okay, so the applicant is requesting approval of a development review permit for 3 new mixed-use buildings and removal of 3 trees. The site consists of 3 tax lots. That's 2300, which is on the west, 2400 and 2500. They're approximately 2.09 acres in size with frontage on Boones Ferry Road. The site is zoned Westlake Grove residential mixed use and is located in the Westlake Grove Design District. The properties to north at 16555 and 16577, Boones Ferry Road are zoned WLGRMU as well and developed with commercial building that's currently at the Bank of the West. The properties at 1667 and 16607 Boones Ferry Road are located in Clackamas County's R8.5 zone and developed with single-family dwellings. The properties to the south are in the R7.5 zone or Clackamas County's R8.5 zone and developed with single-family dwellings. The budding property to the east is located in the general commercial zone and Lake Grove Village Center overlay, developed with commercial bank, the U.S. Bank. And the budding property to the west is vacant and also zoned WLGRMU. Here's the existing features plan, existing features survey. The tax lot 2300 is currently vacant. Tax lot 2400 is developed with existing building and parking lot, which were approved in Clackamas County and then annexed into the city. The building has commercial use on the ground floor and 2 residential units on the second floor. Tax lot 2500 includes 2 existing buildings and a parking lot that will be demolished as part of this project. Here's the site plan. The applicant is proposing 3 mixed-use buildings with office and residential. Office use is permitted use in the WLGRMU zone, and residential use is permitted on lots at an R5 zone density or greater. The proposal meets the minimum maximum density requirements with 4 residential units on tax lot 2300 and 7 units on tax lot 2500. The proposed buildings are set back at least 6 feet from the sidewalks along Boones Ferry Road and are not located in the special street setback, thereby complying with the required setbacks. The site will have access to Boones Ferry Road via an existing signalized shared access opposite of Madrona Street. Proposed development complies with on-site circulation standards with existing network of sidewalks and new pathways between the front entrances of the proposed buildings and leading to public sidewalk along Boones Ferry Road. The project is required to have a total of 45 parking spaces. They're proposing 56 parking spaces will be provided. The project requires a total of 6 bicycle parking spaces. The applicant is proposing 4 bicycle parking spaces located under the main entrances of awnings of buildings A1 and A. Recommended condition A7 requires the applicant to submit a revised site plan that shows a total of 6 bicycle parking spaces, 3 of which must be covered. And here's the utility plan. The utility plan shows proposed utility connections to water, sanitary sewer, and private utilities. Stormwater will be treated on site. Based on the preliminary stormwater design submitted, staff finds the preliminary stormwater design is feasible as submitted. Here's the building perspective plans. So that shows the view from Boones Ferry Road, buildings B in the front and the larger building A, and part of the existing building C. This is further down Boones Ferry, so you get A1, C, and B. And here's from internal to the site, buildings B and A, and then A1 and C. I'll go back to that one. So the WLG building design standards require that the buildings reflect English country or cottage style and borrow from the arts and crafts, English Tudor, and then American rustic styles. Elements of these styles include complex massing, asymmetrical composition, the use of masonry and wood, richly textured and visually engaging facades, a pedestrian-friendly scale, and lush landscaping border plantings. Proposed buildings are similar in quality and design to the existing building on tax lot 2400. Proposed building design is in the English country style that borrows from the arts and crafts architectural style with asymmetrical massing, stained cedar shingles, board and batten siding, and rustic stone as primary cladding, multi-pane windows, and gable and hip roof. The buildings include porches, canopies, overhanging balconies that provide pedestrian scale. Overall, staff finds proposed building design is consistent with the Westlake Grove design standards. And to give you an idea of what the floor plan is, this is building A. So building A and A1 have the same floor plan. Building B is slightly smaller, but this gives you an idea of what the configuration is. So on the ground floor is office space with garage parking for the residential units. On the second floor is, in this case, 4 residential units, each kind of the same size as the others. Start with the landscaping plan. So this shows the proposed plants include native trees such as 11 Douglas fir trees and 13 western red cedars that will grow to a significant size, as well as native trees, grasses, ferns, and ground cover. Non-native trees such as red sunset maples and ginkgos will provide seasonal color. The proposed trees and plants will provide appropriate size, color, and interest on the site. A courtyard is proposed between buildings A1 and existing building on tax lot 2400 that includes pavers and benches. Between buildings and the properties to the south is parking in a 15-foot wide landscape buffer where trees will be planted and the existing 6-foot tall fence is located along the south property line to provide screening. The park and open space standards require multifamily development to provide 20% of the net developable area of the development in open space. This is in addition to the 20% landscaping required, which equals a total of 40% open space and landscaping on the site. This plan shows the areas on each tax lot in the dark areas of what they were considering the open space and landscaping. The applicant is proposing 40.31% of open space and landscaping on 2300 and 40.11 on tax lot 2500, so just barely over the minimum. The landscape plan shows the applicant proposes a variety of trees, shrubs, and ornamental grasses in the proposed landscaping areas. However, the areas under the entrance awnings of the buildings that are shown as landscaping and open space do not show any landscape features. Go back to the landscaping plan here. If you look at the entrances shown here, there's no landscaping, as well as over here and here. There's also areas, concrete areas, that they're showing. They said they'll provide a bench in this area, but it just shows concrete on the landscaping plan. And there's also another area that they show similar with no landscaping features. Staff is recommending condition A8 that requires the applicant to provide a revised landscaping plan that shows planters, benches, and other similar landscape features under the awnings and in those concrete areas that are shown without landscaping. In the tree removal, the applicant is proposing to remove 3 trees on tax lot 2300 in order to construct the site improvements, including grading and paving for proposed building A, parking access on tax lot 2300. The 3 trees are big leaf maples that range in size from 16 inches in diameter to 34 inches and are considered healthy. The proposed tree removal will not have a significant negative impact on erosion, soil stability, or flow of surface waters because on-site runoff will be managed with an erosion control permit. No nearby trees will experience wind throw impacts because the trees on the abutting properties to the west will continue to provide wind break from the southwest. Applicant's arborist report states that removal of the trees will not result in alterations to the distinctive features or continuity of the neighborhood skyline because the remaining grove of trees to the southwest, staff concurs with this report, the removal will not alter the treed skyline. The abutting properties to the south are zoned low-density residential. The trees proposed for removal are located near the west lot line where the abutting property is zoned WLGRMU. The 3 trees proposed for removal did not serve as a visual screen between similar residential uses to the south. The 3 trees are considered the only remaining trees on the property. Therefore, an exception to criterion 3 is required that alternatives to tree removal have been considered and no reasonable alternative exists to allow the property to be used as permitted in the zone. The applicant's arborist report states that the trees are within the required grading and paving area, and alternatives to removal were considered. But based on the required drive aisle width for the associated parking for building A1, there will be insignificant root zone disturbance from paving, curb construction, and associated grading up to the surrounding trunks of the trees, and reducing the width of the drive aisle is not a viable option. Staff finds that the only other feasible alternative would be to locate building A closer to the east lot line, further away from the trees. But this would result in insufficient distance between building A and existing building on tax lot 2400 to provide the pathways and courtyard. Staff finds that there's no reasonable alternative to remove these trees in order to construct a proposed development. Removal of these trees will not have a significant negative impact on the character or aesthetics of the neighborhood. Staff concludes that the removal of all 3 trees complies with the applicable criteria. 6 mitigation trees are required, all of which must be native. The tree removal plan shows mitigation trees to be planted in which include 11 Douglas fir trees and 13 western red cedar trees, both of which are native species. Condition A9 requires the applicant to submit a final mitigation plan in compliance with the mitigation standards. In conclusion, staff is recommending approval of LU 22-003 with conditions.
Thank you, Evan. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Evan at this point? There being none, we would move on to testimony from the applicant for 20 minutes.
So we have somebody joining, we're via Zoom. I'm not sure if Mike's on. While we wait for Mike, I'm Mark Fitkin. I think you want an address? You want an address per the last?
Your business is sufficient, sir.
Okay. So I'm essentially on the side, I'm a developer. And what you're going to see and have seen is a continuation of the building that you're seeing in the picture. So we completed that building a couple years ago. This has been a labor of love since about 2006. I own the 3 parcels here and have worked with the city for years in a very workable, favorable, I think, relationship. So we made our best effort, and I think we succeeded as to keeping the character of the building that you see there. So that was an existing building that we remodeled and expanded, and we kept its character, and we're going to continue that theme and that character and architectural design elements in these next 3 buildings that you'll see. So with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Mike, if you've got Mike on. Mike Toll is with Dowell Engineering and has been the civil engineer for the project.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, commissioners. Apologize, I couldn't be there in person tonight. I'm battling on the back end of COVID actually this week, and didn't want to subject anyone to that. So appreciate you guys making accommodations for me to present tonight via Zoom. I will share my screen here. Hopefully that comes through okay.
Yep.
So as Mark noted, this is kind of the second and 2A and 2B phase of kind of the initial work that we did on the site in the middle tax lot a few years ago. We really appreciate all of the back and forth and the city's help to kind of work through these. Evan has been great to work with. We had quite a bit of back and forth on the open space and kind of the site plan concept to get to where we are today. And I think we're all, the applicant and the city are going to get a better project because of that great effort. So really appreciate his help through the process. So real quick, also with us today, we have George Signori, principal architect with Anchor Moisten, as well as Don Twijo with Anchor Moisten as well. And then again, Mark is the applicant. I wanted to just start, Evan did a really good job of presenting the project, so I didn't want to spend too much time there, although I do have some site plans and some things to go through towards the end here. But I think for the most part, we were very happy and agreeable with the conditions of approval that came out of the draft staff report. Evan did a great job summarizing the findings and creating concise conditions. Part of what Mark is trying to do here is get some of this, some of the demo and site clearing on tax lot 2500, which is the easternmost parcel. The tax lot 2300 has been previously cleared and demoed. Part of what we're looking to do is get some of that early demo work done ahead of kind of the rest of the site permits, notably so that we can get that work done in dry weather come this summer and not risk the kind of rainy season. But there are also some kind of lender and kind of financial obligations of pulling those buildings down and getting some of the site cleared prior to certain dates this summer that Mark is looking to do. So one of the things that we would like to do is request a very minor revision to some of the language in the conditions that talk about prior to issuance of any grading permit. We are okay with all the conditions being tied to the building permit. However, we just want either a modification or just clarification that a grading permit for the lot clearing could be pulled ahead of time to meet those obligations, with the understanding that our road control permit would be pulled through the city and no other site work associated with this application would be done until full building permits are in hand. So kind of with that, you know, we would love to have a discussion on some of this language here. We did suggest kind of one minor, either to be incorporated as a condition or as part of the staff report as a clarification that demo of existing buildings and associated lot clearing and grading shall be permitted prior to the issuance of approved grading or building plans for the new development, subject to a demo permit and a grading and erosion control permit through the city. So love to discuss that further and just offer that clarification as part of our project. I won't go through all these. Evan touched on the main ones of the conditions of approval that were related to bike racks, open space, tree mitigation, things like that. But I did want to just kind of touch on, you know, that kind of title of prior to issuance of any grading or building permit is associated with conditions A1 through, I believe, 10, which were the majority of the conditions in the staff report. Again, we didn't have many concerns over those conditions. We thought they were fair. We were, you know, certainly aware of the open space requirements to add, excuse me, landscape or additional benches or planters kind of at the entryways where we were previously showing concrete with no landscaping, but we were counting it towards our open space. So we have, I will go skip forward just a second. So these are some of the kind of the benches and kind of amenities in the hardscape. You can see this is the first phase that was built out on site in that center tax lot. You can see tax lot 2500 kind of in the background, that kind of brownish building there. That will be the site of building B. These benches, kind of the concrete finishing with a different scoring pattern, potentially differing materials, the pedestrian scale lighting with bollard style lighting, kind of low landscape around some of these areas. Those are some of the features that will be kind of in those entryways or some of those courtyard hardscape areas throughout the site. And then you can see kind of some of the images, again, from the existing building on site of kind of what some of those entryways and courtyards might look like with some of the seating under the canopies, some of these tall square kind of planter facilities next to entryways to kind of create that nice entranceway to some of these buildings and office spaces that may be used by, you know, a medical office tenant or something similar. So I wanted to just go back, you know, again, Evan touched on kind of the landscape plan. We are providing a significant amount of landscaping kind of throughout the site with some of those nicer landscaping materials to really tie this site together with the surrounding properties, as well as the existing development on tax lot 2400. You know, a lot of significant evergreen trees and ground cover along the south property line, along the adjacent residential. And then throughout the rest of the development to create those kind of nicer outside courtyard areas and open space. One minor tweak that is not evident through all of the site plans, but is evident in the latest kind of open space plan that was submitted with the application, was there was a kind of a late change to building B in terms of the placement. We were able to shift it north to get it a little bit further away from building A and create a small courtyard sitting area kind of between the two buildings for, you know, maybe those office spaces, you know, that employees are taking a break, or some of those residential units want to come down and have an area to sit, you know, on a bench or and enjoy the landscape kind of around those areas. So that is kind of now located between buildings A and B on tax lot 2500, where previously there was just a small sidewalk shown there before. And I guess with that said, you know, I know Evan ran through a lot of the renderings. We have those here as well, and you know, certainly our architect on the call can run through those if there's any specific questions. However, I think he did a good job of explaining, the high level quality of materials, the variability in the massing and architectural elements of the buildings, and really the general fit with the neighborhood and the existing building on tax lot 2400. So with that said, I would be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have. And I really appreciate your time and again, making accommodations for allowing me to present virtually as opposed to in person.
Could you go back, Mike, to your slide with the revision and the verbiage that you are interested in?
Yes.
Please.
Yep. One moment. Yeah, and for us, this is more of a, and maybe this is a question for the city attorney in terms of just interpretation of the condition or the way it's written. We just want to make sure, and we've had discussions with city staff to this point about, potentially pulling an early demo permit, or not necessarily an early demo, but a demo permit for the structures that exist on tax lot 2500, as well as potentially, a grading permit to do just some of that early clearing of that to get some of that work done and make sure it happens this summer. So we just want to make sure that the slight wording of this that says prior to issuance of any grading permit doesn't trip us up to pull those two permits.
So I would ask the same question of the city attorney and ask, is this in our purview to revise this language? And if so, what would be the process?
Well, let's first, I would ask Jessica Namanaloo, planning manager, to discuss the rationale on the timing of the planning of the grading and building permit. As far as your rationale, as far as your authority, then we'll get into that, some of the conditions authority.
So in general, we don't typically allow a grading permit to be issued prior to the conditions, a grading or building permit. And a lot of times it's because there's usually a lot of tree removal involved, and we don't allow the trees to be removed until the building permit has been issued. That's a policy. In this case, there are 3 trees that are on the, I think, westernmost part of the site, and I believe they can do the grading without removing the trees. So the trees would need to be protected. They can get a demo permit anytime they want. They could apply for one tomorrow and demo any structures that are on the site. There's nothing preventing them. That these conditions don't prevent them from getting a demolition permit. So I do think in this case, it would be okay for them to get a demo permit and a grading permit, provided that those trees are protected if they don't have those conditions completed that are listed under condition A. So staff does not have any, we're not opposed to this with that caveat that the tree removal couldn't occur.
Until a later time.
Until they completed the conditions under A.
Understood.
Correct.
Thank you.
As far as your authority under the conditioning authority, the condition, you have an authority to impose conditions that are related to eliminating or mitigating a negative impact on natural features, and trees are natural features. So I think we do have the authority as we've exercised it in order to prevent removal of trees without actually development occurring.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Our colleague on Zoom? Thank you all. Are you finished with your testimony, or do you wish to proceed further in the absence of any questions from the commission?
I don't think so, unless there are any questions on the building, its architectural features. If so, George is here to take advantage of that, but if not.
Gentlemen? Got a lot of no's, but thank you so much for being here, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
So at this point, then, we would entertain testimony from any in favor of the proposal. There being none, are there any in opposition to the proposal? There being none, lastly, Donald Conklin is here neither for nor against the proposal by Zoom. Mr. Conklin, are you with us? Mr. Conklin, are you able to hear us now?
I'm able to hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Could you state your name and your address? And then the floor is yours.
My name is Donald Conklin. I live at 4575 Upper Drive in Lake Oswego. And I've lived in this location for 34 years. I didn't intend to testify tonight. I feel as if my written testimony said clearly what I was interested in. I think this project looks like it's following the rules primarily. I do have issues with buffering, and buffering is a very broad issue with regard to our commercial residential interface. As I mentioned, I've lived here 34 years and certainly seen the commercial area of Lake Grove grow, and I like the way it's growing. I like the way this first building looks, but I think that the city of Lake Oswego has kind of dropped the ball with regard to noise impacts on the adjacent residents. And the noise is from dumpster collection primarily. I happen to live most closely to Zupan's Market, and I get truck noise, generator noises from trucks and that sort of thing. But I realize that this development is not going to be a supermarket, so it's not going to have exactly the same kind of noise footprint, but it's going to have a noise impact on the neighborhood. So I believe that the dumpster issue will be different. I think in my testimony, I submitted a photograph of what the conditions on the ground are today for what our commercial residential buffer looks like. And it looks like a dumpster full of meat open on a summer day for birds and rats and insects to come across. So I think that, and I haven't just sat by and watched it. I've called the city of Lake Oswego. I've called Clackamas County. Nobody has ownership over it. So I believe that now, while we're at the planning stage, it'd be nice if somebody could take a look at that and identify these issues where commercial and residential properties coexist and need to coexist. But if one of them isn't playing nice, I think the city of Lake Oswego needs to step up and take care of that. So the next thing I'd like to mention is the trash pickup. I don't know why it has to happen at 4 o'clock in the morning. Certainly it doesn't on the residential streets. It doesn't happen at 4 o'clock. I think that's something that we can plan around, and it can make life better for all of us. So I would put my 2 cents in for that. Beyond that, I think it's worth noting that there's no issues with the trees because all the trees have been cut down on these 3 lots. It's been done in a serial fashion, and the fact that there's 3 remaining big leaf maples is kind of pathetic. There used to be a lot of nice trees in this area, and certainly on those 3 lots. So I'm not going to fall on my sword to try to convince anybody that these 3 trees need to be saved, but I do think that the Planning Commission needs to look at the fact that this development is choking out the last sign of nature on these lots. I look forward to what's going to be planted. I think that the buffering along the backside of the southern border can be improved. I think that the caliper trees that go back in could be increased. The current good neighbor fence that's between those residential and commercial properties is not an adequate buffer. And when you have car headlights pointing through a good neighbor fence, I can say firsthand that that's not a sustainable issue for the residential side. So please take a look at that. I don't know if the city is going to demand it, but just as a note to the builder to be a good neighbor, I wish you would consider what your impact of your project is going to have on the adjacent neighbors. And I realized that the position of the dumpster, I talked to Evan a few weeks ago. It sounds like that's already established. I rode my bike over there the other day, and I have been to the site. Sounds like I'm the only person in the room that actually has been. And the dumpster position looks like it's established. If that can't be moved, then I'd like for somebody to take a look at what does the pickup look like, and how long does that truck need to back up and have his backup alarm going while he services those dumpsters. So please keep that in mind. And again, for the builder, I don't know if the city's going to have code that will direct it that way, but it is something that would be all about being a good neighbor. And this Westlake Grove Design District was crafted with the idea that we could coexist. And I like having the businesses there. I think there's elements that they bring to my quality of life. And I'd like to think that they also can bring their expertise and make their project that much friendlier to the neighborhood, regardless of whether city code mandates it or not. So thank you very much. That's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. Are there any questions for the gentleman? Greg?
Hi, Mr. Conklin. Have you worked with the owner developer on the fence? You're concerned for some type of fence, or is that?
No, and in fact, it's not a fence between my property and the commercial property. I'm a few doors down from this exact location, but for many years I shared a fence with the commercial property in Lake Grove here, which is now where Zupans is developed. So a fence was established there, and it's actually a rather unusual fence that sits on top of a berm, gives it some extra height, and has mitigated the automobile headlight issue to some degree. Car alarms seem like they're an ever increasing issue. I hear car alarms on a daily basis that I wish I didn't, but I realize that's part of modern life.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does the applicant wish to present any rebuttal, please? 5-minute limit.
Yeah. So relative to the trash, I don't necessarily disagree. I have no control over when the trash is picked up, but I think, Don, you're referring to trash pickup in general along the buffer?
Yeah, trash pickup on the commercial side.
We don't get into discussion between the applicant and the testifier.
Okay. So I think that's what he was referring to, but I do think, and I've talked briefly with the architect and the contractor, I do think, so we purposely created a trash enclosure area that is probably well above standards. I do think maybe they ought to be enclosed, and with some air circulation in there, I think, just to keep animals and critters out of there. So it is something that we'll look into doing. I'll just briefly comment on the trees. So I've owned these properties, or the first one since I think around 2006. We had a large half of a tree fall in the parking lot. You can still see the remnants of that. We had a certified specialist come out and look at all the trees. Most of the firs, the vast majority of them, were infected and rotten, and or they had two tops, and there may be a name for that, I don't remember. but they're a serious hazard because at some point the top broke off, a second top grew, and it's highly likely that you'll have more falling. So that, coupled with a number of invasive species, were removed. Not to say 100% of them were, but the vast majority of them were. I think I covered, I think that's it. Okay.
All right, does the commission have any final questions for the applicant while we're rebuttal?
Why does it have to be there?
So at this point, I would turn it over to Deputy City Attorney Boone.
Thank you. Prior to closing the public hearing, any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. If a request is made, the public hearing would be either continued to a date certain, not less than 7 days later, or the record would remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing to enable additional written evidence or testimony to be submitted. The commission would establish the period for any rebuttal written evidence to be submitted. Is there any such request to present additional evidence? Hearing none, unless waived by the applicant, the commission would allow the applicant at least 7 days after the record is closed to all other parties to submit final written argument. In support of the application, the information would be considered part of the record but would not include any new evidence. Does the applicant wish to submit final written argument, which would delay the deliberation? I'm hearing shaking no. You may proceed with deliberation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The public hearing is now closed and the DRC will begin its deliberations, and again, no public comment at this point is permitted. Can we hear from our colleague on Zoom? Kat, first? We're going to reverse order.
Yeah, I think that this proposal with the conditions that have been discussed is something I will support. Again, I think the conditions and some of the comments that have been made in discussion are all important to improve this project as well as to make it consistent with regulation.
Mr. Smith? No comments. Sir?
No comments?
Well, absent any further comments then.
Chair?
Yes,
If
sir.
If I can just start from, the issue was mentioned about the conditions as discussed, and we've
Yes,
had
I'm sorry.
the request to continue or modify them. Staff have any position on the requested? What would you do for the conditions?
Yeah, we have no objection to changing condition A to prior to the issuance of any building permit, but we'll need to specify that but not the tree removal. So we can come up with the wording for the condition for the findings, just to make that clear. And the final findings condition in order, conclusion in order, excuse me.
So in essence, then, we would need a motion to approve with the conditions as written and the subsequent addition with language to be worked out prior to our next meeting.
Right, to allow the issuance of all the conditions upon building permit, not grading permit, but staff will include a condition in order to make sure that the trees are protected before the issuance of the building permit.
Correct.
Right.
Understood, and thank you.
All right, and I assume if that's a modification, the applicant has you wish to make any comment on that proposed condition? No. No. You may go ahead and make your motion and proceed.
That said, is there now a new motion to approve as written and with the proposal proposed by staff just now?
I'll make a motion to approve as written with the conditions as adjusted by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Kat, can you call the roll?
Smith?
Yes.
Stylen?
Yes.
Berardi?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Sangre?
Yes.
So the motion carries 5-0.
That's a tentative decision, written findings back on June the 6th at 7 o'clock.
Correct.
And then the next item on our agenda would be from Jessica, a management update, please.
So as I mentioned in the email to the commissioners last week, we will have a pretty full schedule coming up for the next couple of months. On June 6th, we have 2 items scheduled for that evening, in addition to findings from tonight. And then on the 20th, at this point, we don't have anything scheduled on the 20th. There's always a possibility of a continuance. We have items scheduled for both July 6th and July 20th as well. I'm sorry, not July 6th. It is July, oh no, it is July 6th. July 6th is a Wednesday, so that is a meeting we'll meet on a Wednesday because the 4th falls on a Monday, which is a holiday. And then the second meeting in July, is the 18th. So bottom line is we do have a full schedule coming up for the next couple of months.
And absent any other comments, there being none, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.